Hey everybody, welcome to Now It's Dark. I'm Jim. Just watched a movie on Prime Video called For Sale. This is a 2024 film. It's nearly 2 hours long. It's an hour and 55 minutes. It's a comedy horror about a shady salesman who is tasked with selling a haunted house. This was written and directed by Christopher Schrack. Also sharing writing credits is Jordan Friedberg, starring Andrew Routh. I think it's pronounced Routh. Andrew Routh plays Mason. Claire, played by Corinne Briddy, and there's a bunch of other characters that are all just kind of like background noise, secondary characters. So horror comedies, they are either good or bad. They hit or miss. And this one's not horrible. This is just really long. That's the unfortunate part of this movie. I think there's a fun story where we follow Mason and through his journey into kind of somewhat of a this is a kind of a redemption arc type story for Mason. He starts off as a used cars salesman who is extremely unethical and has some pretty shady business practices, which do finally catch up to him, and he loses his job. And not only does he lose his job, on the same day, he F's up his wedding anniversary. He forgets it's his wedding anniversary, and wife is just at her limit and boots him out. So Mason has to spend a little time living in the old car, doing the van life thing, and he's looking through the want ads and things, looking for kind of a salesperson job. He's not too successful with the phone search, but just while we see a little scene of him walking down the street, passes a telephone pole, and there's a stapled to the pole a sign looking for salespeople. They have those little cut, you know how people do that, like they cut the little strips and he pulls that tab. And that's when he finds a new job um, as an independent contractor to sell houses, in particular, a haunted house. Of course, that's not disclosed to him right away. Mason's more interested in the fact that the house still has all of its furnishings. So, being somewhat homeless at the moment, he decides to, reside there. And yeah, so he starts to be exposed to some of the supernatural elements, so to speak, of this house, and um, all the while trying to sell it because the owner of the small little shop there, and the problem is with this IMDb listing is that it's low budgety films tend to have a lot of actors that don't have their pictures, and I kind of rely on the pictures because I don't always remember the names of the people. Um, but the owner is very good. He was probably one of my top favorite characters, and he makes this offer to Mason that if he can sell that house, he's going to get a huge commission and even be offered a partnership to that little sales real estate. I don't want to call it a firm because it's very, very small um, thing. So Mason, is going through the setup. We get one of those traditional musically set cleaning montages of the home, and that's takes up a little bit of time. And Andrew Roth is good acting. He's playing this character very well. I don't have any issues with any of the acting. Really the only setback is just the length of this film. It really took away from me a little bit of the story because I think they could have really kind of crunched this in. because during the whole length of the movie, we only get a few viewings of the home. We get a first couple that come in and see the home not very long after Mason kind of gets the assignment to sell it. We get some of the supernatural things that go on, and you know, they can hear scratching, and there's the lights and, you know, traditional haunted house things that are going on. And it's Mason's creative way of saying that it's, you know, like central air conditioning or whatever draft, uh, you know, whatever he can think of, even though he has been exposed, but at this point, to some of the actual supernatural stuff. So he kind of knows what's going on. Mason's bottom line at this point is that he's in it for the win. He wants to make the sale at whatever cost. He is not really concerned with the welfare of others. And that is like when I call this kind of a redemption arc movie. This is where we start to see Mason's journey, so to speak. There are absolute nods in this movie throughout, you know, that's part of the reason why this house likes Mason. Um, you know, we get a lot more of the background of the house itself, and the deed being cursed at the end of the film. Um, so that obviously that first showing didn't go well. Mason gets an opportunity when another couple show up. These two man and wife show up kind of in the yard looking at a tree. Mason comes out with a bunch of his BS about what the tree is, gives it, you know, like a ridiculous name of a type of tree that I'm pretty sure doesn't exist. Um, Takes the couple into the house to take a look around. We get a very interesting interaction between Mason and the wife, Alice, and she's really kind of freaky and kind of scares Mason a little bit for good reason. And it turns out, you know, that that might have not been a living couple. May have been some residual um, paranormal stuff happening right then and there. This prompts Mason to try to find out what the heck is the history of this house. So he does the, you know, traditional, as a lot of movies do, doing his due diligence, his research, and finds that this house has a long history, much more than he could have imagined, of people um, not lasting long in this house, and that tragedy strikes everyone that moves in, particularly when there are more than one occupant of the house at a time, and that seems to be the key to the curse of the deed. So Mason is not discouraged still. He wants to make the sale. He wants to get that commission. He wants to get that partnership. He searches out for help in the form of a psychic, and that's when we meet Claire, who is another very fun character. Very dry. Her comedy hit the best for me. Um, I just really appreciated her comedy. Um, and Claire is a medium, and there's a difference, even though Mason doesn't know what it is. And so then we have Claire come to the house. They try to do a little seance. She wants to get a kind of a feel for what's going on with the house. That is answered with some tragedy. And yeah, so Mason is at his wit's end now. He's starting to really lose it. Wants to reconcile with his wife that kicks him out when he goes to visit. He is uh, pulling up to the house and sees that his wife has already moved on and is in the embrace of another man. Poor Mason. So that really puts him in a very odd mental state. He's not feeling the best about life or himself. Goes back to the house, and you know, he's contemplating doing some things that will make him unalive. So we go through that. We can see the breakdown of Mason's character. Again, that's why I call this a redemption arc. When he's at his wit's end the next morning, he sees another person out in the yard looking at that tree. So, of course, he thinks that that is another residual ghost or something. Approaches that person much differently than his normal salesperson persona. But it's a real person who's actually interested and already knows the history of the house, um, which is a real thing, including myself. Like, I'll ask when I've gone to very old places to look at apartments, that were former houses. Even when I was married and we looked for houses, it was always interesting to me to find out if somebody had passed away in the house. Um, and it wouldn't have deterred me. It probably would have made me more interested in the house. So I know that's kind of strange, but there are people that will specifically look for homes or whatever, that have like a history attached to them. And that's what this person presents himself to be. And Mason clarifies that this guy, Jim, who wants to buy the house, coincidentally my name, um, is single. So Mason feels very safe to sell the house because the part of the curse is, it's when it's occupied by more than one person. So considering this guy Jim is single, Mason feels, hey, then let's make this deal happen, and they do. And uh, the real estate owner guy there is like super impressed that Mason sold the house. Didn't think he was going to do it. And there's a big party. He gets his check. Mason's got some money now. And then the real arc hits because the real estate owner tells him a little bit more of the details. And then Jim calls Mason. And Mason automatically assumes this is for something's happening in the house. And so he's a very little scared. What's Jim about to ask? And it really, Jim was being just like, I don't know who to call. My daughter is hearing sounds in the walls and things like that. And Mason now finds out that Jim, although he's single, the house is occupied by his daughter as well, making that two occupants, creating an issue that Mason now is not feeling very good about. So Mason wants to make things right, goes. We have a very climactic ending, and I won't tell you what the ending is, but there is a very, very appropriate finality to Mason's coming around and being a good person, doing the right thing, so to speak. There is an underlying thing going on throughout the movie about burning things down, and a lighter is involved in things. That may or may not be a red herring. But so everything's fine. We get some neat interactions. The ghosts are decent looking. They do a cool thing with anybody who's possessed or ghosted, with their eyes. That actually looks pretty good. It doesn't look that bad. It's not like cheesy. Um, it's better than the traditional, very inexpensive, like white contacts. It's a step above that, which is nice. And we get a cute exchange at the very end of the movie between Mason and Claire, the former medium psychic chick. So overall, the movie is good. It's just very, very long. If you have almost 2 full hours to invest in this, um, the temptation to get up and walk around while you're watching this at home or to start scrolling on your phone is going to be super, super strong. So that would be my only concern about this movie for anyone that I recommended it to. That's going to do it for this very long-winded, pretty spoilery review. A little more spoilery than I expected it to be. But let me know in the comments down below if you would buy a haunted house.
Row 18, plot 20.